Hey, it's Matt Pinfield. It's KLOS New and Approved, and my guest is a guy that I've been waiting to meet a long time. We have so many mutual friends, and I know, and a mutual love for rock and roll, and he's delivered tons of rock and roll that I know you love, so I'm excited to have him here today. It's James Dupree. Jesse, what's going on, man? Good to see you.
It's good to finally talk to you as well. I mean, your legend has always preceded you. I mean, I've always been ashamed that we had never met each other as well, and I've heard some stories about you that would make Keith Richards fall to his knees and beg for forgiveness.
And they're all true. You know, that's absolutely it.
I got Roman Glick, Roman Glick, who played with Brother Kane until I kidnapped him and pulled him over to working with Jackyl, and then now he and I are brothers and do all this stuff that we're doing with the Breathing Fire album. But Roman was telling me about you being late or not wanting to be late for a plane out of Birmingham, Alabama one night, and I guess you guys had to clean up the room before you left.
Yes, we did. It was definitely rock and roll. You know, it's funny. Roman's great, and Damon Johnson. I love those guys, man. We realized I remember. I had so much fun with those guys. I'm so glad Roman's playing with you because I love that band. They were a great band out of Birmingham. You know what I mean? And Birmingham is.
Yeah, trust me. He makes it clear I'm playing with him. It's not the other way around.
It's amazing. I remember being in a car with Damon, and we both realized for some reason I mentioned Thin Lizzy. He's like, dude, I love Thin Lizzy too. And I'm like, man, I saw Thin Lizzy twice with Phil. It was big for me, when I was younger, and I always loved them. I just loved rock and roll like you do, and that's so cool. I love the fact that you've had this relationship where you and Brian Johnson of AC/DC, you collaborated on Jackyl albums before, which is so cool, but you got this new track you're working with him. But can you bring me back to you waiting online for tickets in 1980 to go see AC/DC?
Well, I can. I actually, I'll jump up a little bit. I'd had an opportunity. His Brian's wife had created a benefit for an old Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Theater in Sarasota, Florida. You remember the circus that used to travel? They had a headquarters in Sarasota, and they had these old beautiful theaters there. And she was renovating one of those, and she had a big charity thing, and that's where I first met Brian. And it was Brian and Duck Dunn from the Blues Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And Cliff, the bass player for AC/DC, just a lot of cool people there. And so anyway, he had given me his number. He said, come down, let's write some songs, let's hang out. And I thought, man, that sure was nice of him, right? So I go back home after the benefit, and I didn't, I wasn't never going to be that guy and call him, right? What am I going to call him? Hey, Brian, you gave me your number. Can I come see you? I just kind of let it go. Well, then I ended up getting a card in the mail from he and his wife, and he said, hey, I never heard from you. Here's my number. Please give me a call. And I thought, well, damn, so I called him, and he goes, why don't you come down here and let's write some songs? And that's when I knew he was serious and that I didn't want to be that guy, and trying to intrude on him. So I went down, and we were sitting in his kitchen, and he goes, and I'm going to tie this back to what you're saying about the camping out the seats, because he says, I'm going to run up and grab a shower. He said, and then we'll go into, he has an English pub in his house. He said, it's got all the AC/DC paraphernalia, all the memorabilia and stuff from around all of his platinum records, multi-platinum records and stuff. And he goes, I'm going to take a shower. When I come back, we'll go in the pub and we'll write some songs. I said, okay, great. So he leaves the kitchen, and I'm sitting in there with his wife, and she's messing around cooking something, and he wasn't gone in the blink of an eye. He is hopping across the damn kitchen floor, putting his damn underwear on. Fancy a beer. He said, fancy a beer, me son, and he's going to the refrigerator to get him. And his wife goes, I know what you're thinking. And I said, I don't know if you do, because I'm sitting there thinking, if you'd have told me back when I camped out for 2 nights to get front row Back in Black tickets, that he was going to be hopping across the floor doing the bunny hop to get a beer in his kitchen, I would have ran out and overturned a freight train, right? But she goes, I know you're thinking, how does he take a shower so fast? So then I hear this story about how he grew up in Newcastle, England, and how his mom used to draw a tub of water, and his 5 brothers and sisters would have to get in the tub of water from the oldest to the youngest, and he was the youngest, so anyway, just this whole story. But but yeah, it took me back to when he could have told me, that when I was camping out for those concert tickets, that I'd be friends with him. It's just such an honor and such a big deal. But he's, you've met him. I mean, he's so disarming. He's just he's everything you'd want the lead singer of AC/DC to be. He's that cool.
He really is. He's just one of the most down-to-earth great guys. And when you tell a story about him in his earlier years, of course, I love some of the stuff he did in Geordie, too, but when he joined AC/DC, it was the greatest, it was a great thing. It was so great that was seamless that happened after we lost Bon. But he's so funny, Brian, and you're right. He's unassuming, man, and he's cool. And it reminds me of those stories, a lot of the rock and rollers we love over the years and records that we love, the guys that grew up and came out, out post-war, over in the UK, post-World War II. I mean, working class, like we talk about Birmingham, we talk about our brothers from Brother Kane, and, of course, Rowan now playing with you, which is great with Jackyl. Geezer Butler, I was reading his book, and I was talking about same thing. These guys would have to share water if they had a shower. You know what I mean? It was working class, right?
Yeah, Brian's just a real guy. I had not spoken to Brian in about 6 months. It's been about 6 months or so since we connected, and he has an incredible book that's out about his life before AC/DC, and he was out doing a book tour with that, and so I had not spoken to him, and I carried my wife down for a little weekend vacation for her birthday down in Destin, Florida, and she went to get a spa, went to the spa day. And so while she was there getting her happy ending or whatever they do in the spas,
yeah.
While that was going on, I felt guilty because I started realizing that I had not listened to a full album from front to back in a long time. And bands put so much work into putting an album together, and they argue about the sequence of the album, but it's a lost art. I mean, people don't listen to albums from front to back hardly anymore, and so I felt guilty about that. So I pulled out AC/DC's High Voltage, and I listened to it twice. Then I listened to Highway to Hell and then Back in Black. Then she came back from the spa, and we went to dinner, and I forgot about it. The next day I woke up, Matt, and it was like, you know what? I've got a song in my head, and I can't figure out what albums. I went back and I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. So I get back home, I pick my guitar up, and I'm thinking, I guess I was inspired. I was listening to all that great AC/DC stuff, and I had some really cool riffs that sounded like that, and I was just having some fun sitting on the couch with my cell phone, recording the riffs to my video player on my cell phone, so I didn't forget them. About that time, my son comes walking in the door, Nigel. He lives up in Nashville, and he's an incredible drummer. Plays with Tuck Smith and the Restless Hearts.
Right, yeah, they're good. Hey, man, they're cool, really cool band. Yeah. I like those guys a lot. Is his name Nigel? Did you name him after Nigel Olsen, or who was it? Remember, because he's a drummer. I was thinking about Elton John's drummer. He used to play with him back in the 70s, right? And
I remember Elton John's drummer. Not yet. And Elton John's brother, Elton John's drummer's brother, was also lived in Atlanta back in the 70s. I remember him too. But yeah. So Nigel comes walking in the door, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing home?" And he's a starving musician, but we feed him. He goes, "I came home to get a free meal." So I said, "Go lace up the drums." And I called Roman, and Roman's making some really cool watches now, and he was working on some watches, and he put down watches, and he came over to the studio. And Jeff Tomei is my partner in the studio. He recorded Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dreams, and Jerry Cantrell and Matchbox 20. I mean, he's been around forever. And so he started recording what we were doing, and it was so much fun. I mean, we just jammed and just had a blast with it. And we were recording really old school way with just the microphones in the right places that it sounded good, but I listened to it over the next couple of days. I thought, well, it sounds so much like AC/DC. I don't think I can do anything with it because it really sounds like AC/DC. And I kid you not, Matt, 2 days after that, my phone rings. "Dad, Jesse, how you doing, me son?" And it was Brian. And I went, "Hey, Brian." He goes, "I'm drinking some of your whiskey." And because I'd sent him some of my barrel straight whiskey and that we're making. And so we started talking, and we called up for a few minutes. And I said, "Well, look, I wasn't going to call you, but since you called me, you got to help me write these songs." So he said, "Send them down here." So that's how, a good third of this album has got Brian Johnson, all over it. And we ended up going ahead and putting it out as an album. It's called Breathing Fire. And the first single is a track called Never Gets Old. And just a damn slab of rock and roll. I was on the phone with the Harley Davidson Motor Company while we were riding together. And I was on a video call with some executives from Harley Davidson because I consult and work with those guys. And I looked down and the phone's ringing. And it was Brian Johnson calling. I said, guys, you got to excuse me 1 second. So I go outside and I go into the studio, and Brian is making excuses. Before he tells me this idea, he's giving me excuses for it. And I said, well, just tell me what the idea is. He said, do you remember what the Marines used to say? And I said, what's that? And he goes, and he starts singing the Marine Corps chants, when they're marching. I don't know, but I've been told Eskimo booty is mighty cold.
Yeah, of course.
Singing these old Marine Corps songs, dirty parts of these songs. And I'm laughing again, thinking if you'd have told me when I camped out for 2 nights to get the Back in Black tickets that he was going to be calling and singing that to me. But he says, we change it up a bit. The drums kick in, they stop. I don't know, but I've been told it never gets old singing rock and roll. And that's how that song came about.
That's a great story too. I love that, man. But it's amazing because, and when you mentioned the Marines, like we were talking, my dad was a Marine. Of course, he fought in the Korean War. 2 of my best friends were Marines as well. I'm still my friends, right? I mean, one of them was military all his life, and now he works for Homeland Security. And then my other friend is, he's in the trucking business in Jersey. You know what I mean?
God bless all of them. God bless all those guys, man. I used to drive a truck when I was younger, and you mentioned the Korean War. There's a song on the album called "Stranded," and the song had a little darker tone to it. And again, I didn't really know if it fit in with the rest of the material or not. And a buddy of mine named Johnny Dare, he's on the radio out in Kansas City and does mornings out there. And Johnny sent me a social media video clip of this Marine. He was in Korea at the same time your dad was there, or same place that your dad was. He fought at the Battle of the Ho Chung Reservoir.
Yeah.
And the Marine was 90. It was a tribute they were giving the guy. He was 92 years old. And Matt, he said he could still scale the highest tree just to kiss his wife right on the lips.
That's amazing. And, I love that.
Yeah. But they fought. There was 350 Marines, and they fought for 2 days in sub-degree weather, hand-to-hand combat. And they fought 12 battalions of Chinese. And after those 2 days, the Marines won. And they walked in, but there was only like 15 Marines walked out.
Yeah.
And they called themselves the Dark Horse. And so when you hear the song Stranded, the chorus on Stranded, it was influenced. I don't tell the story of that directly, but it's influenced by how those young soldiers like your dad must have felt being in the Korean War over there in such stranded and harsh difficulty. But they called themselves the Dark Horse. And I do refer to that in the course of the song. But I didn't have the rest of the song. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then my father passed away a couple of weeks after I'd started it. And I went into the studio the day he passed, and I finished out the rest of the song. But it's a great song called Stranded that I'm very proud of. And along with everything else on the record, it's like, 10 kids on, it's like having 10 kids. They're all your favorite, right?
I would say that. Yeah, I go on. Yeah, people their favorite song on that wrote a record. They're all their children. So it's like, it's hard to make that choice. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I love that you did that. I think that's great. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. My mom's 91. She's still alive in Florida. She's in Clearwater. I got a lot of family in the South. So it's. I'm sorry about you losing your dad, but I'm glad that that was a motivation for you to actually get out and finish that song, and that's a great thing, because it's a great tribute, and I think that's
the song is just it's part of it makes the whole record flow. But I mean, the record is just a slab of rock and roll. It's a track called "Born to Ride the Lightning," and you mentioned Bon Scott earlier, and I won't lie to you, I totally put myself in an absolute Bon Scott frame of mind when I sang Born to Ride the Lightning, and just had a blast with it. It's all about influences. I almost called the album Influences because it's the kind of thing where, we're Jackyl is, we've always been proud to roll down the road that all those greats before us, they carved it out. And we celebrate, Matt, the fundamentals of rock and roll every night.
Yeah.
Two guitar, bass and drums, chainsaw, if you will.
I love the chainsaw.
You know what? It's like people say to Angus, are you going to wear your schoolboy outfit, or is Kiss going to wear their makeup, or is Iron Maiden going to have Eddie come out on the stage? You know, is Jethro Tull going to play his flute?
Yeah.
I play the chainsaw, and I'm proud of it. What a more definitive instrument for rock and roll. It's loud, it's aggressive, it's abrasive, it's destructive, it's stanky. It's everything that rock and roll should be.
Yes.
We celebrate those fundamentals every time we hit the stage. And the people that understand that, they come out. They don't come to see a show. They come out to be part of the show.
Let's talk about the records you grew up on. You loved AC/DC, obviously, but, you know, I grew up around the same time. I'm sure we're close in age. And, man, rock and roll was everything. That saved my life. I loved music, and rock was everything to me. Going to shows when I could, mowing lawns and delivering papers and taking any odd job to pay for my records so I could listen to that album. You know, and I love it. I have no regrets about that. A lot of regrets about other shit, but not that. But anyway.
My first hook into music was actually a guy named Joe Tex.
Oh, I love him.
And my dad lost his job back in 1972, and he sold everything we had, including my bicycle. And we moved to Gadsden, Alabama, and bought a little cafe restaurant. He couldn't even boil water. And we went and we moved into this little cafe, and we moved into a little mobile home trailer in the back asphalt parking lot of that cafe we had. And the guy would come and change the jukebox. He would change the 45s out on the jukebox, and he would give me the records. There was Otis Redding and Deep Purple and the Rolling Stones and James Brown and Joe Tex.
Yeah.
And I used to take those 45s back into the back of that little trailer, and I'd put it in, but Joe Tex, Jackyl. You got away here now, did you? Give it here, come on.
Yeah. That's one of the greatest singles of all time. I love Joe Tex. That I Want to Do Everything for You, which is another great one. Nazareth covered that once. Skinny Legs and All, but I Got You is the best. You know what I mean?
And the other one he had, You Said a Bad Word.
You said a bad word. That's great.
I'm going to tell your mama on you.
Yeah. I love that old soul. 60s and 70s souls it's the best. It's so great. It was entertaining, and it had real feeling and soul in it. You loved it, man. That's Joe Tex. I love that you have him, man. It was great. I don't know. Go ahead.
I can't believe with your voice that you don't sing. You got the perfect blues voice.
Yeah. It's fun because I love that. I love it. I've sung, with bands growing up. I always sang and did Bad Company and Free when I was younger, and Aerosmith and BTO and Kiss and, everything when I was coming up in bands for fun, and I did sing with Gene, Peter, and Ace, and I did 3 Kiss songs. I did, which was amazing, and they were in shock that I could actually sing. They were like, holy shit, dude, you can sing. I did, it was a rehearsal. We did 100,000 Years, Rock Bottom, and Do You Love Me? But I love all music. I love, you talk about Otis Redding. I love great music is great music, right? But I'm glad I got to sing I Got You by Joe Tex with Jesse James Dupree. That was badass. That was so cool. I love that. So that was it. That was great that you actually got to keep the records when they switched them out for the other records. It's so cool.
To keep them. We used to get the little dill pickles that would go on the hamburgers in the restaurant. And I would wash out the 5-gallon bucket that the dill pickles came in, and I kept my 45s in that 5-gallon bucket, and I'd take them out there to that old trailer. And you'll love this too, Matt. On the back side of that trailer was a 15-foot high wall that kind of divided the restaurant from this neighborhood that was back behind it, where all these little pillbox houses where everybody that lived that worked in the steel. There was a steel plant down the road.
Yeah.
But there was also a chain link fence behind that wall. That you crawled underneath the chain link fence, and it was one of America's only XXX drive-in theaters called the Rebel Drive.
Yeah, it's funny. We used to sneak into the drive-in in Jersey, and they would do the same thing, and we throw a lawn chair over the fence. Let's get in there. We were teenagers, young guys. That's great.
We would go take all the back row of speakers and turn them wide open, and we would pull them back as far as they go. and then we'd crawl back underneath the fence. And there was a little guy that had this shed back behind the fence, and we'd get up on the shed where the sun had warmed up the shingles, and we'd lay on those warm shingles and watch the Triple X movies.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that story. That's the greatest. I mean, that's what you had to do back then. There was no, for those of us who've been around for a long time, but that's so great that you did that stuff. You know, that's what we did as kids. You'd have to make your own fun and have a good, you know, with your buddies and run around. And, you know, we were always outside. We were always doing something. You know what I mean? Building forts, you know, you name it. You know,
acting like Evel Knievel trying to jump stuff. And
oh, yeah.
I just met Evel Knievel's granddaughter, his son, Robbie Knievel's, his daughter. She was out at the World of Wheels. I did an event, and I made an appearance out and did some signing stuff there in Milwaukee, Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago, and his Evel Knievel's granddaughter was there. It was pretty cool to meet her. She had some great stories about growing up, and, you know, about being Evel's granddaughter. So
yeah,
cool.
I mean, we looked up to him in a big way when we were kids, you know, because you'd see him jumping and doing all the things that he did, and that's really cool. You know, and I heard his son is really cool too. I heard he's a really good guy, right?
Yeah, that was Evel Knievel's whole family's crazy. I mean, they just wide open. I think Robbie's passed away not too long ago. They said that Evel Knievel would go out. They would set the ramps up for him to make the jumps, and they would weigh his motorcycle and judge the distance and the speed, and they would have it set up for him to make the jump. And he would come in and throw that crooked thumb up in the air and say, raise it up an inch or raise it down, lower it down a foot or whatever. And they'd say, well, Evel, you're not going to make it. And he said, they don't pay to see me make it.
Which that's about right. You know, of course, it's the truth. He was smart, man, and really interesting people in that period of time. And I love people with that sense of danger and want to do things that are different, and it's cool. And I appreciate that. That gives people character, and that's what I so appreciate about you and Jackyl. That, I mean, I love you're an entertainer, right? You love rock and roll, but you're out there to entertain and make people part of the show and have a great time.
Yeah, you know? we've been blessed to do what we do for a long time, and you know, and then now I just did a week's worth of Jackyl dates. We just came from Dallas, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. We just made a great run up through the Midwest, and then Jeff and Chris flew home, and my son flew out and jumped on the bus with us, and so now tonight is the first night of a week's worth of solo dates that I'm doing. And I get to play with, name how many artists have gotten to play with their sons. I mean, you know, Eddie Van Halen got to play with Wolfgang.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think Pete Townshend's son plays with him in The Who now, plays some guitar for them. But I've been trying to think of what other artist is fortunate enough to be able to play with their son. You know,
you know, I did just the Cheap Trick guys, right? Because, you know.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Because Rick's son Dax playing drums, and then Robin's son started playing guitar and doing songs from like In Color with him and stuff, which is great.
Oh, wow.
You know,
that is, yeah. So
I love that. Like, that's the coolest thing ever. You know, when you can do that, and when you get to play with your son, that's what it's about. You know, it's a family thing and sharing rock and roll. You know, I love that. There's a
whole different kind of pocket there that you fall into, and I mean, still rock and roll, but it's just really cool. You know, just him growing up around it and everything. We have the same pocket and feel. I mean, and when I turned him on the same, you know, we're talking about the old soul music and stuff. He grew up hearing all that stuff too, because I'm just a big fan of all kinds of music, and especially even old country stuff. I love.
Same here. I mean, for me, it's like I just love music. Been my life and my soundtrack. I love old country too. I think it's amazing. I just, you know, I ended up with like some old Hank 78s and Luke the Drifter stuff. But I mean, it goes all the way through, you know, the outlaw country stuff and everybody, Wayne and Willie. I mean, but in fact, that documentary on country, the PBS one that Ken Burns did was great. I loved seeing that.
Absolutely it was. Yeah. I love that. I spent a day, you remember back when the record stores were fat and happy and they used to have these big record conventions. And I remember I got asked to go set at a record convention. It was, you know, it was for the retail stores. It wasn't open to the public. And it was for all the retail stores to come in and meet artists and place their orders and all that stuff. The record companies had us go and do it. And I went in and I wasn't looking forward to it at all.
Yeah.
I would, that because we'd been out on tour, and I was going to have to go sit there and get through the shaking the hands and taking the, which I'm blessed to do, but it wasn't something but I got excited because when I went in and sat down, I was sitting beside Billy Joe Schaefer, and I got a chance to sit. Yeah, and I spent the whole day with Billy Joe Schaefer. I said, this is like Christmas.
Dude, Billy Joe Schaefer, that's so great. I got to ask you, you've probably seen these, Jesse. How great were those Mike Judge Tales from the Tour Bus on the Outlaw Country season they did? Johnny Paycheck, man, I love that guy. Johnny was great. I mean, he came out of all the craziness, but, you got George and Tammy in there was cool, Billy Joe Shaver. I mean, everybody, Waylon, you know what I mean? I loved it.
You want to hear my Mike Judge story?
Yeah, I do.
So Jackyl got signed to Geffen Records, and our first album came out. We were getting into the second album, and Beavis and Butthead came on TV. And I went, good God, if that don't have Jackyl all over it, I don't know what does. So I go to John Clodner, John.
Yeah.
And so I go to John. I go to LA, and I tell John, I said, man, there's these two little cartoon fellas on the MTV. I want to do something with them. I think they're going to be huge. And he goes, He goes, I'm not familiar with that. So we get up and we go down the Geffen mansion there on Sunset down to where Peter Barron's office was, the guy that was over video.
Yeah, I haven't seen Peter in years, but I knew Peter well from those days. Yeah.
Exactly. You know him from MTV and all those things.
Yeah.
So we go sit down with Peter Barron. And I said, Peter, there's these two little cartoon guys on MTV. I want to do something with them. It's got Jackyl all over it. Peter goes, He says, I'm not familiar with them. He goes, I'll check it out. Because they just had started. I just knew it was going to be big. So he calls me up a couple of days later and he goes, hey, I've got a meeting with MTV and the guy named Mike Judge that created Beavis and Butthead. He goes, we're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks. And I said, awesome. That's great. I said, let's do some fun stuff with that, right? So in the meantime, before they had their meeting, that kid burnt down the trailer in Texas playing with matches.
Yeah.
Remember, and they blamed it on Beavis and Butthead because Beavis was all fire.
Yeah.
And so that press and that publicity for the show made Beavis and Butthead explode even bigger, right?
Yeah.
And but they had to quit doing the fire bit. They stopped doing that, but the show just got enormous. So they had to postpone that meeting with Geffen, and so when they finally picked the meeting back up, Beavis and Butthead were so big that Geffen said, let's just do a whole soundtrack. We'll do a Beavis and Butthead soundtrack. And so I hear about it and I'm all excited and stuff. And then I get told that I couldn't be on the soundtrack.
Jeez, and you told him about it. You know what I mean? It's amazing.
But yeah. So there was a guy named Tony Berg that was a young kid that at the time, I think he's still around now, but he'd come into the record company and he wanted to take it more hip hop-ish, and he wanted to do something in a different direction, a little bit away from rock and roll. And so I was with John Clodner in New York, and I said, yeah, I'm being told we can't be on the Beavis and Butthead soundtrack. And so he calls up Tony Berg and basically just tells Tony Berg, look, Jesse brought this to the record company. He's on this damn record. You're not going to damn screw him over like that. And but it ended up being this whole big back and forth. But we ended up on the record. It sold like 3.5 million copies.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And
Tony Berg was a British guy, right?
Yeah, I didn't ever really know Tony. He, like I say, he had his own idea of where he wanted to go, and John Clodner kind of took it over, and he put Aerosmith on there, and he put us, and just made it a great soundtrack.
I'm glad John did that. I'm really glad he stepped up and just said, "Hey, this is we're not going to let it go now," because it actually had more to do with the show in the rock direction anyway at that period of time. Nothing against.
Oh yeah, I mean it totally worked. But and Rob Zombie was on there, and it was just it was a great. But 3.5 million copies that thing sold. It was a great compilation of bands.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was great that you guys did that. I mean, there's so much history, which is why I want to get together and hang out with you. When you come through the L.A. area, I got to come see you play. I mean, I got to, and or if I'm down in Jacksonville or like St. Pete or anywhere like down in Florida visiting family, you know what I mean? Because I have a daughter down. I've got one daughter there, one daughter out here. You know what I mean? And they're, but I want to come see them. But let's stay connected. I really want to, I want to make sure that I get to come see you play, Jesse, because I just knew that you and I were going to be friends. I knew that because Leslie was like, you guys have to meet, man. And Leslie Fram, we'll give her some props. I love Leslie and her husband, Lenny West. She's crushing it at CMT.
Yeah, she is. And she's back on the air in Atlanta.
Back on the air in the mornings in Atlanta, which I think is great. You know, did you live by them in like Buckhead? What area were you in?
Yeah, I'm over in Kennesaw. I wasn't too far from Lanny and Leslie. I live over in Kennesaw. Used to be the country.
Yeah, I remember. They used to live by this restaurant called the Horseradish Grill. That food was good there, man. I went there to eat, and the Collective Soul guys in town. A lot of, you know what I mean. It was there's a lot of good people. But
well, it's great. It's great to be connected with you, and Matt. It's an honor to talk to you, man. And I'm proud of you. I followed you, and I know you've really. I mean, everything you've done is amazing, and I'm seriously, I'm a big fan, and it's great to talk to you today. And I appreciate everybody out there dialing in and listening. Grab that knob, crank it wide ass open, because Brother Matt Pinfield has got you going on new and improved right here on KLOS. Pow!
Yes, that was great, man. I got to tell you, Jesse, I'm so glad I got to meet you here because. You're everything. I knew that you were going to be everything that Leslie told me you were. She's just like, you're going to love Jesse.
Well,
and I do.
Same here.
And I got to sing I Got You with you, one of the greatest 7 inches of singles of all time. And you were talking about Duck Dunn, too, man. I love all that Stax Volt, all that, like Otis and Eddie Flood, all those singles from back in the day.
I did.
Soul music.
What a great period of music, man.
Yeah, I know. I still love that stuff. It's fun. I just did this job with this band, and I spun all stuff from 1950, like from Elvis, Bo Diddley, and Fats, all the way through like rock and soul to the newest thing I played. This was in Rome, believe it or not. It was a crazy gig I got to spin after this gig at the Coliseum. And I spun nothing but 7-inch 45s, and the most modern one was You Shook Me All Night Long. But it was everything in between. You know what I mean? Which is what they wanted. And what a gift and a blessing it was to get that gig to go over there and do that, which was so cool, But yeah,
when I did that benefit with Brian and Duck Dunn was there, and it was a big jam, right? Tina Turner's band leader. There's all these people there. And Duck Dunn came out on the stage that day, and he was looking at the amp, and he had his old bass on, that legendary bass that he played. And he was looking at this brand new Ampeg amplifier that had all these buttons and faders and shit. And he was sitting there looking over his glasses at it. And I walked up and said, "How you doing, Duck?" He went, "What is all this?" And I said, "Well, that's compressor and EQ and just all this stuff." And I said, "But you don't have to use that. You can just bypass that button right there if you want to." He said, "Do that." And I said, "Okay." So I pressed the button for him. He hits his bass, boom, boom. And then he reaches down and turns the tone knob back about halfway and hit it again. He went, boom, boom. He went, "That's good." He never touched that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so funny. He went, he didn't even touch it when I told him he could bypass. He goes, "Do that." So I just pressed the bypass. And then he just made the adjustment on his bass and never touched that.
That's incredible. Those guys like him and Steve Cropper and all those guys that played on all those records, and those Muscle Shoals guys too, the Stompers, man. I love all that stuff. I love seeing the docs on those guys. And
yeah, I do too. Yeah, I was gonna say I've been watching those documentaries too. Just some great musicians, and to be able to meet these guys, I mean, that you grew up loving, and say, I mean, whether it's Brian Johnson or hell, I mean, you know what? I mean, I hate politics are so inflammatory these days because, it's always for me been a big deal to be friends with Ted Nugent. I mean, the guy, he wrote Stranglehold and Cat Scratch.
I love Ted. And let me tell you, I did a great interview with him for HDNet, which is now Access TV, years ago. But, man, I saw him open on that first album of Stranglehold and Stormtrooping and Just What the Doctor Ordered. I saw that tour opening for Aerosmith Rocks when I was a kid. Man, he jumped off those speakers. I love Free For All, Cat Scratch Fever. I love all those albums. You know what I mean? He was. Just such an influence. And same thing with Billy Gibbons and ZZ Top, and just some really, really great influence that I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to now call friends. And
And now I get to say that Matt Pinfield's my friend. So
oh, yeah, we're definitely friends, Jesse. That's amazing.
That adds to the list.
And next time I see Billy Gibbons, I'll tell him you said hello, too, because you see him, too. But, we see him a lot because when Tim Montana comes out here, too, we hang out. And some of my friend was laughing. He goes, Billy Gibbons got in the back of your girlfriend's car. I go, Billy, you want to sit in the front, man? I go, you're taller than me. He goes, nah, man, it's cool. And he got in the back of my girlfriend's car. We dropped him off at home. But we go out and we talk about, radio in the 50s and 60s, and we just have him go on. He explains to me what border radio was like growing up in Texas and all the other shows he saw. It's cool. I love that stuff, Yeah,
we spent a year on the road with him on tour years ago, and I cherish every bit of it. And just I used to not be a fan. I for the longest time, it took me forever to really become an Eddie Van Halen fan. I knew he was a badass, but I never was a fan because I was so wrapped up in Billy Gibbons. And Billy Gibbons can hold one note and bring you to your knees.
Yeah.
And that's where my heart was. And of course, again, a big fan of the early Van Halen stuff, and Sammy. I love Sammy Hagar. Good people. And Sammy he's made a good living off of some whiskey too. So he's an influence of mine. There's my whiskey right there.
Oh, that looks awesome. Yeah, but you know how to drink it. My friends would, and they will. You know what I mean? Because I don't mind. I'm not one of those guys in recovery that's like, don't drink them out of me. I was like at Bourbon and Beyond Festival and Louder Than Life, and I served 50 Jack and Cokes, and I was like, I'm at that point now in my recovery where it doesn't faze me because I did it all. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm great. Yeah. And I say to people what David Bowie said to me years ago. He goes, I don't drink anymore, but he goes, enjoy yourself. And I was like, I can do that too because I want people to have fun. I don't want to, I don't want them to. They don't have to change their lifestyle for me. But if anybody wants help with anything, I'm there too. I can just share my experiences. But I'm all for my friends that are like you and all the other bands and Metallica different, with whiskey because whiskey is awesome. You know what I mean? It's great.
I'm not a huge drinker myself. I'll be honest. I mean, I didn't drink for 18 years.
Yeah.
But I've never really struggled with I don't have an addictive personality, thank God. Except for music. I love music, but yeah, I can be in the business. But they say the best drug dealers don't do their drugs.
Yes, exactly. No, it's the smartest thing too. They used to say, don't get high in your own supply. What are you guys doing? You know what I mean? And and that means for everything. But man, it's just I think that's great. And yeah, Billy is so cool. You mentioned Sammy. I love that first Montrose album when I was young too. You know what I mean? It was and I never understood why people didn't like them. But ZZ Top and Billy Gibbons, man, one of my favorite bands of all time. And turns Absolutely. Out, right? Isn't it amazing? Turns out he's one of the greatest people as well, and so down to earth and kind, and just a killer, man. I love him. But Jesse, we're going to hang out next time you're out here. I just want to say thank you so much. Never Get Old is the new single, and the album's coming in November, right?
It came out in November. The album's called Breathing Fire. And seriously, you just want a straight up rock and roll record. I mean, and again, proud to have worked with Brian Johnson from AC/DC.
I'm going to go listen to the whole thing as soon as I walk out of here.
Please do. Listen to Lay It On Me and Born to Ride the Lightning and Breathing Fire, the title track, and Stranded. In honor of your father, listen to Stranded. In honor of your father, you got to do that.
Yeah, and, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate that. So, Matt, you have a great day, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the video. Can I ask you a question? Is the contest still happening with Never Get Old, or
No, we that contest ended, and we just the winner of the contest that named all of the bands. Oh, there's a video for Never Gets Old.
There's two of them. There's a lyric video, and then there's the regular video. A lot of our friends and people we love, you're like in there with, and it's really cool. Yeah. That one too, which is the official video, and then the lyric video is great because it's got there's Let It Bleed. There's all kinds of stones and everything imaginable.
All of the legendary fonts from the albums we grew up with, we made the lyric video using all, and if you can name all the bands that influenced the fonts that we use, then you want a trip to Florida to see a concert that we played, and we just did that this past about a month ago. So
are you based in Georgia now, or are you based in Florida?
Yeah, I'm in Georgia. I'm right there just in Kennesaw, Georgia.
Yeah, you're still. That's great, man. Dude, I love my friends and family down there in the South. You know what I mean? And like I said, I got a daughter. She's in college right now down there. You know, she's in Jacks. So, you know, a lot of music in the South. A lot of great music's come from there. You know?
I'll be in, I'm going down to do a big charity motorcycle ride for the police officers. It's called Back the Blue. And I'll be doing that next week in Tampa, this next Friday and Saturday.
That's great.
Have a blessed day, man. I appreciate you, Matt. Y'all take care.
Well, I was Jesse James Dupree, and what a great hang with him. Got to sing with him, and, man, he's everything people told me he was. He's a good guy, good character, and it was a lot of fun. Don't forget to check out his latest record, Breathing Fire. I'm Matt Pinfield for KLOS, new and approved. I'll be seeing you soon.